Good morning, campers, my beautiful divine feminines. Welcome to the next episode of Divine Feminine Talks. Today we're going to be talking about waves of twin flames. So perhaps it's something that you've heard of if you are on a journey, that us twin flames in this age, we have come to this world to restore divine order in a free waves. Some people divide these waves into four, and I'll talk about this as I walk you through. And these waves linked to two key things that I want you to remember. One is going to be timing. So there was first wave, then was the second, then it was the first, obviously one after another. They do interlock, right? But it is related to the timing when we came to Earth. But it's also related to individual path and wounding of the pairing, an individual mission of every pairing, right? That they carry to this earth. So all of the other episodes that I've done previously about, divine feminine and masculine energy, about the path of the masculine, comparison of the journey of the feminine and the journey of the masculine, the stages, they're going to be same. They're going to apply to all twin flames, right? So today we're going to break down the differences, right? Because sometimes you go online, you talk to different feminists, and you may not understand why certain things are so different for us, right? So we're going to be talking about what those differences can be depending on your individual wave, right? So we're going to start from first wave, a very magical wave. So those were the first twinnies that initiated what we now already call the new earth, right? So we are here to sort of assist in transition, in that separation from old earth to new earth, to restore divine order, right? So that first wave, they came to lay the foundation. And the journey of those wavers is a little bit different, because first wavers usually, remember that there's always, exception to the rule, but for 99.9%, my candle just went crazy as confirmation. Twinnies in the first wave are pairings that met very early in their life. So we can be talking even childhood, adolescence, high school, maybe early years of like university, or early 20s, right? But usually very early. But they were not activated. So this is the key difference. There is a pause of sorts between the meeting and the activation, right? And when I talked about in my episode that I spoke about past lifetimes that we live together, I explained the difference. So you can go ahead and watch that. What's the difference between actually meeting your twin and getting activated to the journey, because it's different. So they met, but they were not activated. And the reason for that is the part of their path was for both of them to engage in a completely separate lives. So they would oftentimes go ahead and marry someone else. Some of the feminists would be with a karmic. Some of the feminists would even be with a soulmate, would have a family, would have children, right? And there's a good reason they couldn't be activated to the journey, because if you get activated, once you get activated to the journey, it is literally impossible to move on from your twin, right, and start a family and live your life. So yes, there are some feminines, and again, in the episodes that I touch on feminine and divine feminine and dating and separation, I explained this concept in detail, that at some point feminines are being tempted by soulmates and quitting on a journey and settling with a soulmate. But it's a whole different topic. But in this case, that twin flame, that person in between meeting them and activation, becomes this, that first love, that one that got away, that one that perhaps we couldn't be together for whatever reason, right? But it's someone that always warms your heart, someone that you always remember, someone that you occasionally think, what if? What if we end up being together, right? But you never think about them obsessively. You don't think about them in a way that it enables you to start that family. You're sort of at peace, right? Because you haven't been activated. And the first waivers in that phase before activation, they wouldn't even know who their twin flame is. So if you are someone, you are now married or you even divorced, and you have that person that you haven't seen for like 10, 20 years from your childhood, that you feel like is that one that got away, and you know what twin flame is, chances are it's not your twin flame, that it's a karmic. Again, it should be always treated individually for that final confirmation, but they usually wouldn't know. They wouldn't know because they're not activated. So certain information would not be shown to them because they were meant to live a very 3D life, right? So at one point, they get activated to the journey. They meet that person after, again, 10, 20 or more years. This is when it hits them. This is when they get activated and they start going through all the phases of the twin flame journey, right? First waivers usually fall into the divine feminine, falls into the second or the third basket when it comes to her path. So if you've watched that episode, just a quick recap because this is very relevant. When I spoke about the path and the purpose of the feminine, that I personally divided into like 3 baskets. So first basket is the feminines, that we're psychic mediums, we're seers, we're clairvoyant, we're all clairs, but we're psychic mediums, we're shamans, we're readers, we're seers, very tapped in, very activated, very connected to the divine, right? That second basket are those that are very spiritual. We're all very spiritual, and we're all, clairvoyant and clairsentience at one point. Those gifts get activated. But in that second basket, it's for feminines that will be maybe, Reiki healers, spiritual masseuses, womb priestesses, maybe artists, musicians, painters. So it's going to be very spiritual, very divine, but not necessarily with that full-on psychic activation, right? And then the third baskets are feminines that will have what we would call a normal 3D job, right? But it is always coming from a place of deep purpose and values. So they can be nurses, they can be social workers, they can be teachers, any job that you could think of. They can even have small businesses and manufacture something, and there's a good reason for it, and we'll talk about it as we at the end of this video. But just to recap, so you remember what those 3 baskets mean. So the first waivers would usually fall into the second or the third baskets. And what's important about these waivers, that on a generic level, they walk in silence, right? So they walk in silence, they have more of a 3D life. So those can be your pairings that you're not even going to know that they're twin flames. They're not going to be talking about this. They're not going to be announcing it, because their mission is to lay foundation for the Great Awakening. And their mission was to restore that belief that it's never too late for love. It's never too late to wake up and to believe that this was my person all along, that everything led to you, right? That you can later in your life, separate from your partner, even if it was a beautiful partner, a soulmate, or if it was a karmic. Not always it's different, right? This is very individual, but you can always start over. You can always find your Prince Charming, you know what I mean? It's in the sense of believing in love that can happen at any stage, at any age, that you can rebuild your life, that it's not less of a family if it's a blended family, right? That it's not less of a love if it's love that you found in your 40s or 50s and you were divorced, and so on and so forth. So No one will probably know, but it will be that restored belief that, you know, you can go through certain things and then find your true love, right? Most first waivers at this point would be already activated. Perhaps there are some pairings that are not just yet. Just a side note to confirm to you, I when I was guided to make this as a topic, do it as a topic, right? About the waves, I went into meditation. Sorry, just like I always do for answers from spirit, and then I had a dowsing rod sessions just to confirm, double confirm with spirit that I'm giving you the right information, right? So it's directly from divine knowledge. So most of these would be activated. Perhaps there are some pairings that haven't been activated just yet. And most of these as well, again, not all of them, but most would be already in union, right? So moving on to next wave, and this is where sometimes it's a little bit different. To me, this is second wave. However, some divine feminines, for example, Ragida the shaman, if you watch her, she's an amazing divine feminine, beautiful content creator, very established in the field, and it's one of those feminines that you can absolutely trust. She divides this wave into two because there's a slight difference in the woundings of the feminine and the masculine, right? The second waivers will be your most wounded divine feminines and divine masculines. We're all wounded, right? We all have work to do. This is why we all go through all these stages. We all go through bubble stage. We all go through in and out. We all go through separation. There's no exception to this. You cannot be on a twin flame journey not to go through separation. We go embark on a solo journey and our quest to heal. But the second waivers, they're really those wounded birds. They're really those people that really, really deeply wounded. We're talking about, not all of them is going to be like a huge trauma, but we will all have deep childhood trauma to be healed and very distorted masculine feminine energy that needs to, again, we'll all have to heal. We're all going to be sitting in our distorted energy, but we're talking about deeper wounds, right? So this wave, the second wave, is the wave that we get activated immediately after meeting, okay, your twin flame, and your stages start immediately after, right? And this is the wave that most divine feminines will fall into the first basket, maybe the second basket, but most of those divine feminines will be your psychic mediums, your seers, your shamans, your readers. Most of us will be very strongly tied to online presence. So one of the part of our path will be to be very vocal about either directly twin flame or just divine love, to restore divine order, to restore believe in love. So most of us will have some sort of online presence, again depending on your path, and I talk about this often, and it's something that you need to understand as you understand the value of what you're creating. And I spoke about this so much in all my videos and often in readings. Some of us will be meant to be very seen, to attract thousands, if not hundreds of thousands and millions, and will be like Regida, right? You travel the world, you have sessions, you have activations, you're all over the internet, right? And some of us will just create smaller communities. It's just depends very much on your purpose, right? But we will have that online presence. We will go through very intense activations. Those will be your feminines that will be exploring heavily past lifetimes, healing past lifetimes, breaking. We all do that. We all heal on the level of a soul and break generational trauma, but we will be very much sitting in this world, right? In this world. So most will be the first basket, some will be second basket, right? Now, the slight difference that Regida, for example, sees, this is why she divides in two additional waves, that wave that I call the second wave. There is also a slight difference in years. So the wave A and the wave B, right? So one of these waves, so for some part of twins in that wave, it's going to be that pairing where the feminine, one of her greatest woundings was low self-esteem, usually a result of abandonment trauma, rejection trauma, oftentimes father wound, huge low self-esteem, not good enough, never feeling good enough, never feeling smart enough, never feeling pretty enough. And for the masculine, the characteristic, he's going to have a very locked heart, resulting from trauma, karmic relationships, and he oftentimes sits in a very shallow place when it comes to intimacy. I'm not sure whether you can use the S word on YouTube. Not that I haven't used it in the previous episodes. I'm not good at these things, but let's agree on call it intimacy. So oftentimes those are our sweet little Casanovas of one night stands and never wanting to be vulnerable and connect deeper with anyone. But in the same time, both of them, the feminine and the masculine, will be masking this deep belief in love. So that part of the second wave, those are the love bugs. Those of us who we love love. We love love. We dream about love. It's nothing that we dream about more, right? And for that part of second wave, intimacy is incredibly important. This is our weakness. This is why we come back. It's for us, it's extremely healing. Again, intimacy is a very important topic for all twin flames. It's part of the fact that we change that matrix and we restore divine order. And I'm planning to make another episode about intimacy, sexuality. But specifically for that part of second wave, this is the hardest part that in our connection we say no to, because our bodies literally crave for each other. It's given for all twins. Our bodies are made for each other. We design mutually our bodies to it's our paradise. The body of your counterpart, it's your paradise, right? And your connection to God. But it's very difficult. So for us, that breakthrough moment, and a very important thing, especially when you approach union, is to start from a place of the heart. Because the biggest part that we will have to do, especially the masculine, to raise his energy from a sacral space to the heart space, to understand that this doesn't exist without this. It's this infinity symbol that they need to create, raising that energy upwards towards the heart level, right? So it's going to be very challenging because, again, due to wounding, they got so disconnected that they started treating it as necessity, as sport, as breadcrumbs of love, right? And this is usually what they offer to the feminine. And the feminine, it deepens her abandonment wound and her self-worth wound, because all she wants is to be loved by that masculine, right? All she wants is for him to invite her for coffee, to invite her to grab a bite, to have a conversation, to hold her hand. And in the meantime, he refuses to get her out of the bedroom. It's going to be mostly booty calls and, I'm not willing to give you anything else, friends with benefits kind of situation. So to him, he's going to be too afraid and too vulnerable to offer anything more, due to what I've mentioned, and he's stuck in this ways that this is maximum what he wants from love, physicality. And to her, because she has such a low self-esteem and abandonment issue, she's going to always come back whenever she calls, right? Until she works through that self-esteem issue. But in reality, it's only going to be amplifying her wound, her abandonment wound, and her self-esteem, because she wants to be seen more than just her exterior, right? And because he refuses to do that, she believes in herself less and less and less. Like, I'm not even worth to take me for a cup of coffee, right? And that second part of that second wave, right? So second wave B, for both of them, raising to the level of the heart is going to be incredibly important, right? Raising to the level of the heart is going to be incredibly important. And for the B wave, it's going to be slightly different, right? Because it's going to be less about physicality, intimacy. Again, like I've mentioned, it's important for all of the twins, specifically for that wave. But that second part is going to be more that the feminine, not so much low self-esteem and runs for breadcrumbs, but she more wants to control the masculine. She more mothers the masculine. She more is that people pleaser, is that ultimate twisted, distorted feminine model that the woman has to sacrifice everything to give it to a man to take care of him, right? So distorted feminine. So it's going to be more of an issue for that. So they will be very like, where is my union coming? Give me a date, right? It's a thing for second wave both, right? But especially for that B, because it's a control issue, right? So again, those feminines going to have to raise to the level of the heart to trust fully, to really, really, really trust fully, right? So heart space, very important for second wavers. I've mentioned it already. Now, moving to first wavers. First wavers will as well go through the same stages, right? So activation immediately after meeting, they're going to go into in and out. They're going to have to go through separation. The difference is that because they are a third wave and we have already laid foundation. So remember, first waver laid the foundation. They walk in silence, right? Second wavers, we assist in that big awakening. This is what we do for that new earth. We assist in that big awakening. This is why we're so vocal. This is why we talk so loudly about spirituality. We become spiritual teachers, masters, practitioners, right? And we start to break the matrix and plant the seed for the new earth. Whereas the third waver, they are the actual builders. So they are those that are going to have families. They're going to have children. It's not like the first and second wavers, we're not going to have children. It's going to be very individual. It's not a role. It's irrelevant. It's going to be individual to you. It's not part of your mission. Some pairings may choose to have families and start families. Some not and dedicate themselves fully to the mission. But for third wavers, it's part of their mission to start families, right? To have children of new earth, to change completely the model of love, of family, of raising children, and so on and so forth. So they actually going to be building that new earth, change model of family and of abundance as well, of fulfillment, right? Builders of new earth. And that third wave, because of that as well, they're usually not as wounded as the previous wave, especially second wave. We've already risen the vibration of the planet, so they're usually a little bit more awakened from the very beginning, right? So the feminine, from the very beginning, yes, she's going to be suffering. Yes, she's going to be in pain. Yes, she's going to be walking the hell of her shadows, and she's going to have to heal. Same with the masculine, but she might not be going through those stages that second wavers we go in the beginning. Complete delusional, complete obsession, craziness, mental breakdown, and it's especially that we go through those activations. We start seeing things, hearing things, right? Again, all feminines are deeply intuitive. We're all high priestesses. but there's a level of that activation of the and that awakening, right? So it's a bit of a more of a kicker for second wavers, whereas for them, because their purpose is different, their journey is different, it's a bit softer. So from the beginning, they might have a little bit more compassion and love towards the masculine. They might have a little bit more understanding of the journey, because often confirmation, a lot of them are spiritual already on some level, right? So they might not be full on awakened, right? But those are going to be your feminines that, I always believed in connection to nature. I always believed, in meditation. I always believed in past lifetimes, right? It's like, it's not a complete shock to them. It's like the foundation that we've laid, all the information online, all the vibration risen. They start their journey in a world where you already have, a lot of masters that you can follow, spiritual teachers that you can go to. It's not an issue to find a reader, good shaman. Whereas for first waver, it was impossible, right? So because they have a different mission, they start from a place of bit of a more awakening already, right? More awareness, spiritual awareness. And the third wavers, again, it's never going to be 100% rule, but most of them will fall into that third basket, right? So they may be feminines that they're going to become spiritual teachers and have a spiritual practice, again, be like a Reiki healer or acupuncture therapist, whatever that is. Or we're all shamans, truly. But they more going to go towards, they may be artists as well, but they more going to go towards those third basket on a generic level, generically speaking. So those are more or less those 3 waves of twins. What I want to mention to you is a few points, maybe not a few points, from a perspective of separation, because that's a common question, so I want to address that. Does it depend on the wave? So the answer is no. We all go through separation. For every twin flame pairing, the average separation is going to be 4 years, okay? Full on separation. So from the moment when you stop the in and out phase. So the first in and out phase, your masculine comes back. Every month, every 2 months, every 2 weeks, it's going to be different for every pairing. But there's a moment he disappears completely, under a rock, nowhere to be found. And that full-on separation that is created for you to go into deep healing, finding yourself, finding your way back home to yourself, finding your path, is something that is given to all twin flames. All, non-exception. Spirit was very clear about this. There is no exception. And on average, it's going to be 4 years, okay? And some pairings, it's going to be 2. Some pairings, it's going to be 8. It may even be more. Again, it's going to depend on your individual woundings, on your path, on your approach to the journey as well, right? Because I talk about this all the time. This is our milestone. Meeting your twin flame and union is something that you cannot escape, but you can prolong it if you refuse to accept certain things, if you refuse to do the work, if you are in denial, if you're not dedicated to yourself, to your journey, to your path, right? So it's going to be very different for every pairing, and it's something that we cannot know, and it's never going to be shown to us on our journey. It's one of the things that we have to surrender to, right? But minimum, regardless of the weight, 2 years. And what I want to mention to you, 2 things about that rule. There can be some exceptions, but they're going to be very rare, so don't get excited. Everything happens for a reason. Really, farther along the separation, it gets easier and easier. It's like you stop in the beginning, like every day away from him seems like a month, and every month seems like a year. But then it's like, oh, it's been 2 years? Okay. It gets easier. Time heals wounds, and especially I've talked about this in that episode, how to handle separation. You haven't seen him, you haven't heard of him, so the 3D image of him disappears. They for them it's different because they usually watch us, they usually observe us, they usually keep tabs on us. But for us, they completely disappear. We have no idea what's going on in their life. We have no idea. So you just humanly, You remember his frequency, but you humanly forget, right? So it's that image is dissolved, so it gets easier. For a good reason they say time heals wounds. Time actually doesn't heal wounds, but time gives you space to heal wounds, right? So it was just a side note, but what I wanted to mention, that those 2 years is minimum, okay, for a twin flame pairing to go into separation. And there may be some exceptions, but remember, there's so few twin flame pairings on this planet, okay? Because there's 150,000 twin flames, so divided in half, and you're going to have the amount of pairings. It's not even 0.5% of human population. There's very few of us, because it's a difficult journey, right? We come here on a mission. Sorry, I keep getting drop downs and I get distracted. People just refuse to leave me alone. I'm just kidding. Right, so if there are going to be exceptions, less than 2 years, we're literally going to be talking about, I don't know, like couple of pairings, okay? When your joint mission is incredibly important for the collective, right? So we all have individual mission as sovereign beings of light, as individual, right? The feminine, the masculine. And then you're going to have individual mission with your twin, something very specific that the two of you will have to do, right? And if your joint mission is incredibly important, is that pivotal moment, that pivotal point for the creation of new earth, for breaking the matrix, for breaking the paradigm, you're going to be pushed to reach that union sooner, right? In my experience, that is something that may fall between second and third wave, maybe third. There's no rule, right? Because there's going to be very few couples. For the rest of us, it's going to be minimum 2 years, 4 years on average. So it can be anywhere from 2 to 8 years plus, right? And what I also want to mention, that sometimes for the second waivers, that separation can be a little bit longer, because the journey of the feminine is very specific. Now, I don't want to say like more difficult, because I always talk about this, that one of the most important things of spirituality, of human existence, is to understand that both love and pain are vibration. You cannot compare. My pain is not greater than your pain. Your pain is not greater than my pain, because it's a vibration. We feel it, right? So from a logical point of view, you could say that someone has been through hell, physical abuse, mental abuse, so they suffered more. But it's a very individual thing how we feel our pain. Pain cannot be quantified, right? However, the second waivers, us feminines, or masculines as well, because we're one soul, remember, right? It's going to be a little bit different, but we are spiritual teachers. For most part, we're going to be spiritual teachers. So we're going to be dealing with people's vulnerability. We're going to be dealing with people's souls. Those are going to be your psychic mediums that will connect you to spirit, that will channel message from spirit. Those will be your shamans that will assist your kundalini awakening. Those will be your shamans that will take you on a shamanic journey to past life regression. We will hold space for you. We will hold space for people, not just twins from other ways, but for people, and from the same way for each other, for people to awaken, to heal on the level of a soul. So it really requires skill, knowledge. We have to go through all this pain of the soul. Oh, a bird just flew by. To understand this pain of the soul, right? Our mission is a little bit different. So sometimes the feminines will sort of have to go through that longer separation to really, for the spirit to really feel you're ready. You're ready. You're ready for your union, because I know that your masculine will not sway you away from your mission. that the healing part that needs to happen with masculine will not disturb your mission, that you're mature enough spiritually, that you are that high priestess that can hold space for other women and men to deeply heal. So sometimes it can be a little bit longer if you would take that pairing into a into a different wave. But again, it's just a detail. Still, for the second wavers, some of us can do it in 2 years. Some it's going to be very individual, right? And like I said, but for that wave, it's very specific because we walk that path of spiritual teachers. And our masculines are spiritual. We're all healers, and our masculines are spiritual teachers as well. It's just that not all of them, many of the masculines of the second wave, they will have always, they can always have what we would call a 3D job, a very matrix, because masculine operate in a matrix, right? But they will always carry that element of spirituality. Second wavers, especially that second wave A that I've mentioned to you, we're very sensitive souls. Again, we're all, right? Let's agree on this. We're all healers. We all love. We're all very sensitive. We're all old souls. But specifically that second wave, we're very sensitive. We're those love bugs. We love love. We love love. We're those people that from childhood you would believe in love, in Disney kind of stories. You would love stories, right? Very romantic, very sensitive souls. So once they awaken, they will carry that vibration of love, that vibration of spirituality, of connection to God, of divine order into their mission as well. So we're deeply spiritual beings. So as you can see, the mission is a little bit different, right? So the first, what I want to mention as well, because I remember that I've mentioned that the first wavers, for most part, they are in union. Some of them would still be in separation. Some of them would not have been activated yet. But generically speaking, that wave already, most of them would be in union. For second wave, it's happening right now. This is the moment where we are in separation. Not all second wavers have been activated yet, but a lot has been activated. We are most, if not most are in union yet, but those are very powerful years for the second wavers, that unions are going to be happening, right? 2025 is a very powerful year for twins, and specifically for those second wavers is a huge window of opportunity to get into union if you're ready. And if not, that 2025, because we're entering Age of Aquarius, it's going to open that 5 years window that most twins from all waves will get an opportunity to get into union, right? But the third wave, they're just getting started, right? So very few of third wavers would already been activated to the journey, right? Very few. Some are already in separation, but most third wavers right now would be either not yet meet your twin, or you've met your twin, you've been activated, you're in that in and out phase. So they're going to be starting separations right now. I don't think any of the third wavers are in union just yet. So that's how it looks like. That's how the topic of the waves looks like. If you have any questions, as always, leave them in the comments. If you are a divine feminine who is a spiritual teacher, so you are a channel for divine knowledge, and you have a bit of a maybe different experience, let me know, because like I said, I am a channel for divine knowledge. Every video that I make, every content that I make, it's a download from spirit, it's a message from spirit. I'm just a tool. It's not like I have that knowledge. It's a spirit speaks through me, right? So if you have that is part of your mission, and that has been activated within you, and there's something that you want to add to what I've said, please leave that in the comments as well. And yeah, as always, I love you so incredibly much. All my info is in the box below if you want to connect to me. I post daily on TikTok, stories, content, collective reading, twin flames, spirituality. And you can also reach out via Instagram. If you want to book a session, please DM me via Instagram. I love you so incredibly much, and I hope you have an amazing day.